Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Give people a chance to have a seat. What's his problem? So thankful for all of you coming out this afternoon to our third candidate interview. And I want to, at this time, present to you Dr. Garrett Brundage, who will be interviewing this afternoon. Dr. Brundage, I would like for you to meet the members of the board, and I'll start to my left. Mr. Mike Haney, Mr. Frank Kyler, Ms. Nancy Stewart, Dr. Wayne Watts, Pastor Andre Huff, Kelly Cochran. Okay? Ms. Stewart is going to honor us with a prayer. If you would all stand, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you tonight. We thank you for this day. We thank you for our families, dear Lord. Dear Lord, we thank you for every child in our school system, dear Lord. Dear Lord, I pray tonight that we all keep in mind we want to do what is best for our children. That's our main concern, dear Lord. Dear Lord, we asked you to be with our interviewer tonight and help him through tonight, Lord. We thank you for all your blessings, dear Lord. We give you all the glory and all the praise. In our name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Dr. Brundage.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to Gadsden, Alabama. Before we actually start our questions, give us just a brief overview. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Garrett Brundage. I am originally from Eatonton, Georgia. I have not recently, I've been living in Conyers, Georgia for the past 20 years. I am married to my wonderful, wonderful wife, Stacy. We've been married for 20 years in June. We have two wonderful kids, one 13, Brooke, the other 11, Jana. They are very much so into the arts and very active in dance and in band. A little bit about me as far as my education. I know you all have my resume, but just for the benefit of everybody else, I grew up in Eatonton, received a Board of Education scholarship before I decided that I was going to enlist in the armed services with the Marines. But since I got that scholarship, the only stipulation was that I go back to my hometown and teach in a critical field. So I majored in math, taught math in my hometown for 6 years. After that, I went on to be an assistant principal at a high school in the town that I'm in right now. After that, I became a coordinator. After 5 years, became a coordinator of school safety, then a director, promoted to executive director in the superintendent's cabinet in 2009. And then I became an assistant superintendent and chief officer for safe schools and student affairs. I have supervised principals on every level, elementary, middle, and high, including alternative school principals, the magnet school principals, many specialty programs, as well as the Career Academy in my hometown. And I'm looking forward to sharing more details with you as we have our discussion today.
Thank you, Dr. Brundage. I believe Mr. Haney has the first question.
So that you know, Dr. Brundage, we start out with what I call the stock questions that were sent to you, and then we will likely have some follow-up questions.
Yes, sir.
And I think yours are numbered the same as ours are, so we're starting with number one.
Okay.
What do you see as the role of the superintendent as it relates to employee groups, students, and the community and the Board of Education?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Um, First of all, as superintendent, I'm responsible for um, communicating the vision of the district, and that involves um, establishing a positive and supportive and welcoming school culture in this district. For employees, that means uh, communicating that vision, making sure that vision is clear for all employees. It also means that um, we have to help employees understand the diverse needs of our students. And that comes with taking a look at the enrollment, taking a look at free and reduced lunch rates, taking a look at the demographics, and then understanding where our kids are coming from. It also means for employees that we set targets, not the superintendent setting the target, but the superintendent working alongside teachers, working alongside principals to set specific targets based on what the data says now. How much growth or how much academic achievement do we want to make, or how much growth do we want to make for the following year? Taking a look at those taking a look at those state assessments and seeing how much growth we want to make for that coming year, whether it be 10% growth or whether it's a raw number as far as the number of kids showing that particular growth. And then once we work with principals and teachers to set those targets, then we have to hold them accountable for meeting those targets by the end of the year. So that's what that means for the superintendent. The superintendent has to make sure that principals and teachers have the available resources and materials and support to carry out the necessary steps to meet those goals and to achieve those particular targets. And of course, I don't rule by fear. So I like for the people that I work with, whether that be a custodian or an assistant superintendent, I want them to be able to approach me, and be able to approach me and give me some candid conversation about what they feel the needs are, what the needs of the students are. So I like input from those people that are doing the work with me as far as employees are concerned. Um, as far as students are concerned, that means hiring the absolute highest qualified teachers for our district. The ones that are here, help them with their professional development, but the ones that the positions that we need to fill, we need to make sure that those teachers want to teach in Gadsden and that they understand what's necessary to provide students what they need in order to succeed. So hiring the best teachers, and then when we get them on board, training, retaining them, and making sure that their development is to the level so that they can provide a world-class uh, uh, in education for our students. In terms of community and board, uh, this means getting involved, making sure that everybody in the community has an opportunity to have a voice, either with the superintendent, or a superintendent's representative, and the people in the school system. Doing that helps to foster strong relationships, and I've done this in my previous positions, fostering relationships with city officials, fostering relationships with county officials, local government, state government, even some factions of the federal government. But getting those people involved with the education here in Gadsden. Once you build uh, healthy relationships with the people in this city, in this district, and in the community, then you start to build trust. Uh, I know the people here do not know me. So for me, building trust means doing what I say I'm going to do. So if I tell you that I'm going to do something, then I have to carry out by any means necessary what I say I'm going to do, as long as it's within the law and within board policy. So once I begin to do that, and then I begin to uh, update the board, the public, and our employees on that, then that builds trust, and you have to have that in order for this governing body to be successful, and for the people that we serve to be successful. I believe in for the community, and for our employees, and for the board. I have to be a problem solver. For the past 9 years, I have been charged with handling all grievances and all complaints from parents of 16,000 kids. So you don't get that type of responsibility from four different superintendents without being able to be a problem solver, because those superintendents didn't want that on their desk. So they put that on my plate. But with that, it allowed me to be able to build relationships with those people, and of course, building trust with those 16,000 families. For the community and board, it also means being visible and being approachable. Again, I said I don't want to rule by fear. I want to be able to talk to teachers. I want to be able to talk to uh, principals. I want to be able to talk to the board, and I want to be approachable. I am willing to work with all of these groups to do what is right for our children. Let me shift gears a little bit, just for the boards, from the board standpoint. My role as a superintendent is to carry out your vision, and much of that is designed to ensure student achievement, first of all, and then to make sure our students are growing. They're going from one level of achievement to the next level of achievement. And what we think is the highest level, which may be a level four or distinguished, or whatever you may call it, highest level of proficiency, they can even go further. They can get deeper. That's my role as a superintendent for the board. In addition to that, in terms of what I do for the board, is ensuring that the day-to-day operations are running the way they should. That means managing facilities, managing the finances, providing support and resources to the schools, the principals, and teachers that they need, and then, of course, providing leadership to our principals, to our central office staff, and making recommendations for hiring, and then, if necessary, dismissing personnel. But one of the other things, and I think is the main thing, is to make sure that we position this governance team, put us in a position to be successful, and that means providing all these people out here the resources that they need to do what is right for kids.
The follow-up to that is, why do you want to come to Gadsden, and do you have any acquaintances here?
I don't have any acquaintances here. After I received a phone call last week that I was going to be one of the finalists, I rushed over here last weekend just to tour the place, and of course I had an opportunity to really get a grand tour today. I think that Gadsden is an excellent place to be, especially after today. I saw so many great things. One of the major things for me when I decide on whether or not I'm going to apply for a position is to make sure that my kids are able to grow up in that particular area. And I have no doubt that my kids and my wife would absolutely fall in love with this place, simply because you get kind of a city feel, but you don't have all the hustle and bustle of the city. So there were many positions available in Alabama. I had a chance to research all of them this year, and Gadsden just stood out to me. It feels like home. It feels like the city that I live in now, with just a few more residents. And touring the place today and meeting the people, I like the connectedness that I think everybody is willing to accomplish for the benefit of children here.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Dr. Brundage,
Yes, sir.
we have 5 quality finalists for this position. Why should the board select you?
Before today, before my tour, I had a wonderful answer for you for that. That's all been written out, and it looks great. It talks about my accolades and talked about the tangibles and intangibles. But I tell you what, when I went to visit some of the classrooms, thanks to some of the principals that are sitting out here, and I looked into the eyes of some of those kids, and I had a chance to talk to some of the teachers. I see great potential when I see what I see in the classroom. Not that they're not getting what they need, but I see so much more. Um, when I look into the eyes of those kids, I really kind of see myself. I'm not from Gadsden. I'm from Eatonton. We had about 3,000 kids, and now I live in Conyers. We have about 17,000 kids, but I've been able to meet the needs of those kids in Conyers because of the background that I had when I was a student. And like I was saying, I look into the eyes of those students and I see the things that they may need that I'm not saying that they don't get them, but take me for instance. I was a student back in Eatonton, and imagine a student who did not perform well on standardized tests. Well, there was no lack of intelligence, but most of the time you get graded by the standardized test. Now I did well enough to get to the next grade, and I wasn't pushed along, but I did well enough to get to the next grade. But being a slow reader at the time, that was my issue that nobody ever identified. Uh, Being a slow reader means that a passage may take me 45 minutes when it takes other kids 20 minutes. Uh, Taking me 45 minutes means that I'm not going to be able to answer all those questions because you get a time limit, right? So someone should have identified that. Now, 40 years ago, they probably didn't have a support plan like a 504 plan, but that's the type of plan I needed. I didn't need any additional instruction. I just needed, instead of 45 minutes, I may have needed 2 hours to get through the passage and then answer the questions accurately. So there was no lack of knowledge, and that's what I'm thinking that the children of Gadsden need to identify the real issue. It's not academic always. It could be social. It could be emotional. It could be physical. So getting to the root of the problem, removing that barrier, and then opening that child's mind up to be able to be educated. So that's the reason why I think that you all should choose me is because I look into their eyes and I see me. But thankfully, along the way, I've been able to defy the norm. Now, as far as my training is concerned, I've been trained to defy the norm as well. When I arrived on the scene in my current district, we had similar demographics as here. We had 70 to 73% free and reduced lunch rate. And of course, the norm, what people will tell you is that the higher the reduced free and reduced lunch rate, the lower the test scores become. But I believe that we can put a system in place. And I have the blueprint, I have the framework and the training from previous superintendents to put that system in place where we institutionalize a system that everybody in the district uses, where we are identifying the problems with each individual student, supporting their deficiency or their need, and then opening them up to be willing to be taught. Again, it's not always academic, and that's what I see here. I've defied the norm personally. I've defied the norm or helped our district defy the norm as a professional, and I think I can do the exact same thing for Gadsden City Schools.
Thank you.
Dr. Brundage, what steps would you take to create a culture of learning and high expectations among the employees in our school system?
Great
Dr.
question.
Brundage, before you start, pull your mic a little bit closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that good?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Sorry about that. I believe in leading by example. I think that coming in as a new person, as a new superintendent, it's important to meet with the leadership staff, meet with the governor's team, meet with all principals to talk a little bit about my educational philosophy, and then model for them what I call the cycle for continuous improvement. And once I deliver that cycle, communicate to them, or actually have them to provide some input into what that cycle should look like. I have the framework. Now, what should the steps be in the cycle for continuous improvement? And you'll hear me say this on many of my answers, and I'll get into the details of that cycle in just a few minutes. But I think it's important to talk to the governor's team, talk to principals and teachers about where Gadsden City Schools is academically, where we are budget-wise. I believe in being very, very transparent. I also believe in talking about the highlights. There are some, going around the system today, there are some great things happening here. So people need to hear that. People need to know that. So the public needs to know that. Our partners, once we partner with the local colleges and universities, once we partner with the city and parts of the county, once we partner with other organizations throughout this community, then they will understand where we are in terms of academic progress. They will also, once they understand where we are, be willing to provide their input. I think that is a very, very important step. So I'm not the person that comes and tries to dump things on the employees and say, this is the way to do it, this is the best way, there's no other way. I like input because that opens our employees up to wanting to do the work if they know that they've had some input into what we're trying to put into place. Doing that, I think you build a culture for continuous improvement, not only as leaders, but our leaders that are in the classroom, they'll understand as well because they'll see the big picture. They'll see the academic achievement data as a district. They'll see the academic achievement data for their school, and then at the teacher level, they'll see the academic achievement data in their classroom for each one of their individual students. And then they'll apply the cycle for continuous improvement, taking a look at data, providing standards-based instruction to all students first. Once we do that, then assess the students to see where all students are. And then where the rubber meets the road is when teachers are able to take a look at the students in their class, determine which ones have deficiencies and which ones are performing at a high level, and apply that same process of teaching and reteaching and then reassessing remediating right there with real-time information and correcting whatever problem there is. And sometimes the issue may be professional development for the teacher, and we have to understand that and embrace that and provide those teachers with what they need in order to be successful as well.
How have your previous experiences prepared you to be the superintendent of this school system?
I think I've mentioned a few things already, but I've had 23 years of experience as an educator, several years as a teacher, as a successful teacher for 6 years, several years as a school administrator, a central office administrator as well. I've worked in both rural and suburban districts, both small and large, and I've learned that I had a talent to lead, and I have a talent for working with other people. I have a talent for building relationships, which is a major part of what I do. I was so thankful today that I had a chance to meet with the mayor, meet with the president of Gadsden State Community College, and several other people that were willing and able to engage, and I think that's what is needed. I've had an opportunity to work with Georgia Tech with our magnet school in my current district. I've worked with other districts to bring in specialty programs such as nursing, welding, teacher preparation programs. So I work with Georgia State and Georgia Piedmont to bring in dual enrollment programs into our district. And I think as long as we don't have any barriers, we can make that work here in Gadsden as well. I've worked with 4 superintendents now in my tenure in Rockdale County. During that time, I have served as a representative to represent the superintendent at community forums. I've presented to the board for the past 10 years. I've built relationships with many people within our district and within our community. I've fostered student achievement and improving the graduation rate when I was supervising those particular areas. And I've established quite a few things that are institutions in my district. For instance, many years ago, I wrote a grant for $4.5 million, and we received it. So one of the things I know how to do is go out and get money. When you're a department of one, you need to be able to do that because people don't think you need money if you're a department of one. So I went out and got money, but with that, I was able to hire what we call prevention and intervention specialists. And these prevention and intervention specialists were tasked with focusing on those students who had disciplinary problems, but it had no recourse but be suspended. So I put in place of people at each one of our secondary schools that stayed there all the time to take a look at the disciplinary data, identify those students who had a certain number of incidents, develop a caseload based on that information, and then give those students what they need in terms of conflict resolution, anger regression, or weapons diversion programs in order that they'll have the tools now to make right decisions and not be repeat offenders. So that's just one thing. I helped create a platform for the superintendent to speak to the public. We have a parent academy where parents come. They have some fun classes, but they also get a chance to learn what the district is all about. And that's an opportunity for the superintendent to kind of do the state of the system address to 200 or 300 parents and give them an idea. So now they can go run with the real story with their constituents in the community. I've also attended 2 national superintendents academy, one that was fairly urban, The other that was very universal. And I've also taken professional learning institute courses with our Georgia School Superintendents Association. So I have not only do I have the background to be a superintendent, I've been in the background doing the work of the superintendent, helping them to be successful. And I just think now it's time for me to be in the forefront and be the face of the district.
Thank you. Describe how you would obtain support from the Board of Education for candidates that you intend to recommend for employment.
Well, aside from going through human resources and doing all the things that are necessary according to board policy and as far as Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, aside from those things, the posting, the application process, the making sure that everything is fair. I think that candidates, before I bring them to the board, have to go through the vetting process with the executive leadership team, and that will be the superintendent's cabinet. Of course, as far as fingerprinting and all those things are concerned, we want to make sure that those candidates, before I bring them to the board, are vetted through us as an executive leadership team, as a human resources department first. Once we do that, bringing a candidate to the board means that I've already told the board the need for the position. We've identified the need based on a student decision rather than an adult decision, making sure that the need is connected to student achievement, and communicating to the board what the benefits of having that person on board. So I think all of the vetting process needs to be explained to the board first, and then I bring that candidate to you for vetting with the board. I do think it's important to kind of notify maybe the president of the board first, so that the president of the board can talk to the board members individually, just in case there's some type of conflict, and the board member with the conflict can maybe recuse themselves from the vote.
Dr. Brundage, discuss the most difficult personnel problem you have ever dealt with, and how you received it.
The most difficult personnel problem. There was, excuse me. I was, even though I'm in school safety, I also work with human resources a lot, doing investigations. And there was a situation where a 22-year veteran teacher, she was over a program, an after-school program, for 14 years. She had gone through 2 principals. So the second principal was not monitoring the after-school program very well. It turns out there was some discrepancy in the funds that were being collected. In other words, the number of students that were present wasn't justified when you look at the amount of money that was coming in. And to make a long story short, what was happening was the cash, something was done with the cash that we don't know, basically in my investigation. And then all of the checks were in the deposit. So that the checks, they were accounted for, and the cash was not. To make a long story short, there was a discrepancy. The receipt books did not match, and there wasn't a good explanation for why those things didn't match. So over that particular year, there was $30,000 missing. And then over the course of 5 years, there was $100,000 missing. And this is just based on my investigation. There was no justification, and much of the evidence was shredded. So, my conclusion in that situation was there was some theft that took place, and it was hard because the person that I had to report that information to was the principal of. Not only was he my supervisor, he was the superintendent, but he was the principal of the place, and he hired that young lady to be his after-school person. But basically, I laid out the facts, I gave him the information, removed all emotion from it because you don't want to change anybody's livelihood. But when there's a theft that takes place, and you're really not doing what's right by kids, doing what's right with the funds, because that funding was going to take was going to take that Title I school to the next level. $100,000 is going to take it to the next level. They could have done so much with that. I had to make a recommendation for termination, and for me, the human side of me says that you know you want to do everything to help this person, but I also believe in doing what's right, and I had to make the right recommendation.
Dr. Brundage, what are your expectations for student achievement?
Great question. First of all, now these are some wild expectations. I believe that 100% of our students can perform, or 100% of our schools can perform above the state average on a standardized test. I just believe it. If you put the right thing in place and everybody is vested, then that can happen. I also believe that 100% of our students can achieve a level of proficiency on the state exam. I know that's kind of wild, but I just believe that that can happen. And if it can't happen, can we do 97? Can we do 98? Can we get to that point where it looks like, wow, that there's no more growth that we can do? And then I think that 100% of our students can graduate college and career ready, and that means ready for the workforce, ready for the armed services, ready for a technical school or a technical work, or ready for a college or a university. So those are my expectations for academic achievement.
Thank you. Eliminating the achievement gap is a moral commandment. What approaches would you pursue specifically addressing the middle population of students?
Well, first of all, the middle population of students. Is there any way you can clarify the middle population?
Well, maybe not the the AP, children and those that may, be in the lower classes. And then sometimes there's the idea that those that are kind of in the middle, sometimes they're forgotten.
Okay.
So what could you do to help reach that middle population of those kids?
I'm going to give it a twofold answer. First, I think it's very important that all of our kids have a professional, personal learning plan. And part of that plan helps every teacher and every principal identify all the successes of those students, those particular students, all of the gaps, the deficiencies of that student, those students, where they have excelled and where they need additional assistance. But I think the very first thing, and this is a passion of mine, is for every teacher to build relationships with their students. I think it's important for every teacher to have healthy relationships with their students. Then, of course, the curriculum comes down from the state, but it's up to us to make sure that the curriculum is related to related to real life. For instance, in geometry, you could easily use a baseball field. So it needs to relate to life some kind of way. Once we're able to do that, it's up to us as educators to make our classroom lessons, what we're going to teach, be related to our students' interests and what their aspirations are. Now, and I believe we can do that. It's a lot of work, but I believe that we can do that. Once we do that, then we can target our instruction to each individual kid, even if we have 20 kids in the class. We know what the interests of those 20 kids are, so we need to be able to deliver on that for each one of those particular. That's what the personal learning plan is all about. And once we are able to target that learning, we're able to target the support for those kids as well. I also believe in being flexible as far as the learning environment is concerned. Not every kid learns well at 9 o'clock in the morning. Some of them learn at 9 in the afternoon. Some of them learn at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if we have a one-to-one plan, or if we have a bring your own device and a platform where teachers can post lessons or the teachers can interact via chat, then learning can take place 24 hours a day. So we have to be flexible with that. I think once we're able to do that, you create the intrinsic motivation that students have to learn. So you open them up to the learning. That takes care of all students, in my opinion, but it is especially targets the middle population, because you mentioned that may be the population that's being forgotten. You got the higher achievers. We're giving them enrichment to get them to the next level. You got the low achievers, or the ones who have low achievement. We're trying to bump them up to a level of proficiency. But those people who are level 2, showing some proficiency, or those students that are at level 3 that are proficient, we need to put things in place to help them get to the next level. And that's what I've worked on for several years. We call it moving the ceiling and the floor at the same time. So that I'm getting into another question, but we're kind of closing the achievement gap, because the ceiling is not going too far. You're just giving enrichment and you're giving them a deeper understanding. But this floor, this bottom 25%, this bottom 30%, you want to move them up to the next proficiency level and then to the next proficiency level, so that all your students, the 100% that I was telling you about, is at proficient or better or exceeding proficiency.
Thank you.
Need to pause for a drink of water.
Yes. Are you telling me that I'm talking too much?
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
Dr. Brundage, we are committed to closing achievement gaps and dramatically increasing our graduation rate. Please describe any successes you've had in these areas and how you would accomplish these goals in Gadsden.
Thank you. I mentioned the bottom 25% in my last answer. We have in Georgia a similar achievement levels where there's no proficiency, there's partial proficiency, there's proficiency, and then there's distinguished. And what we have tried to do, and what we have been very successful with, is looking at the bottom 25% of each one of those levels, placing those students on a caseload. And this is after you have taken a look at the student achievement data to determine who is going to be on those caseloads. Once we do that, if you attack, so to speak, that bottom 25% and provide those students with reteaching, remediation, and then reassessing, you want to do that to help those students to show mastery. And the theory is that if you continue to do that, then they'll show mastery on one or two more standards, right? And they may show some deficiencies in some other standards. So let's say, for instance, they have 10 standards. On the first test, they show proficiency in 3. So there's 7 that we have to work on. So when I say reteaching, I'm not reteaching those first 3. I'm reteaching the other 7, then providing some remediation to those students. After I remediate and feel comfortable as a teacher that we've modified the instructional delivery for those particular kids, we're going to reassess and see where they are. Now they've showed proficiency on 4 more, so now we have 7 out of 10. But we have to repeat that cycle with those 3 that they didn't get, and we're going to do that for each individual child. Now I know that looks like a massive task from the superintendent's perspective, but if you're working with your principal, if you're working with the principal is working with the teacher, and the teacher is working with each individual student in that particular class, then we can accomplish that. And that's how you move students from level 1 to being close to proficiency, and level close to proficiency to proficient, and then proficient to exceeding. And then those who are exceeding, they don't get left by the wayside. We give them enrichment so they have a deeper understanding of the standards that they've already showed proficiency in. We've done that in Georgia with the bottom 25%. I don't understand why we just deal with the bottom 25%. I think that every student, if you're not showing 100% proficiency on all of the standards, then there's room for improvement for even the highest level kid to get this same process so that we reach that 100% that I was talking about earlier. As far as the graduation rate, I've been successful in helping our high schools reach the highest graduation rate that they've had in my district, or at the time that they've had in my district. We went from 78% to 83.3%. And the way that I did this is, first of all, opening up an open campus for those students who, at the time, they really didn't have much hope. When you're a third-year student in high school and you have 4 credits, then hope gets kind of thrown by the wayside. But opening up the open campus and working with the state in terms of waiving seat time and accelerating the number of credits that students can acquire in a period of 9 weeks, we were able to give kids hope again. So even though you had 4 credits and you've been in school for 3 years, there was an opportunity for you to graduate on time because you could get all 3 of your credits in 9 weeks, then another 3 in the next 9 weeks. So that's 6 credits in a semester, which you wouldn't have been able to do at all. Now, granted, those kids had to have support and some modifications in instruction in order to get there. We also had to have some type of blended learning, some type of online learning for those particular kids. And we were able to accomplish that. But because we were able to accomplish that, those kids did not drop out. They did not drop off our radar. They did not enroll in some other program. They're still a part of our graduation rate, which improved our graduation rate. Because we're not at 100%, and we're not at 100% here, I think there's more work to do in order to get to that point. I can bring those programs to Gadsden. I can work with the virtual learning teacher to get those courses offered to more students and available, and work with the state in order to get the seat time waived potentially, so that we can accelerate courses for those students who need it.
Thank you.
Describe your experience in developing, implementing, and evaluating curriculum and instructional programs to raise student achievement.
So I'm not going to talk about the. I like the fact that building healthy relationships. I harp on that, building healthy relationships. But let me get back to your question. I have a terminal degree in curriculum and instruction from Argosy University. I've had that terminal degree for the past 15 years now. So my formal training and focus has been on curriculum and instruction. I believe in taking a look at student achievement data from the very beginning. And once we take a look at that student achievement data, we need to focus on what the issues are in that data, whether that be deficiencies with the students and providing them with support, or it may be that it's a deficiency with the teacher, but providing that teacher with support and professional development as well. So I believe in looking at the student achievement data, collecting the data, analyzing it, interpreting it, sharing it with school leaders, communicating the findings with the instructional staff. I believe the instructional staff is important at the central office level to see if there's a bad item on the test or a bad item that addresses a standard on the test to see if there's a real issue. I also believe in making sure that whatever test we're gonna use to assess our kids, that's a state exam, needs to be aligned with the curriculum. I have experienced many times that the benchmarks assessments that we use have not been aligned, and that situation needs to be corrected because it gives false information not only to the student, but it also gives false information to the teachers, and those benchmarks end up having to be thrown out. And we have to throw out a benchmark. That is frustrating for a student, first of all, because they don't want to take the test anyway. It's also frustrating for our teachers. So we have to make sure when we're going to assess, as far as the benchmarks are concerned, make sure that those assessments are yielding the information that we need so that we can use that information to address the needs of our teachers, address the needs of our students as well. I will tell you that going a little bit deeper, and I may be in the weeds here, but it's never made sense to me that, and it may be true, but every elementary school teacher is a master of everything. So they master English, master science, master social studies, and master math. They're masters. Now there may be some, but the data reveals who is great at certain areas. So let's say, for instance, in fifth grade, so the entire fifth grade, they teach their own kids, right? But one teacher, teacher A, all of her kids, 95% of her kids, his or her, are successful in math on the state assessment. And then the rest of the grade level kind of suffers. 50% in one class, 45% in another, 65% in another. Why not have every student, let's say it's fifth grade, in fifth grade, learn math from that teacher who has this 95% pass rate? So it doesn't make sense for me to have kids suffer in another class. Now, I'm not saying that the teacher doesn't know math, but it doesn't make sense to me to keep those kids in that class or those classes when they're not getting what they need to pass, and you have the resource right there in the same school that can address that. Now, I picked on math, but I'm also talking about English language arts. I'm also talking about science. If you had a science teacher who was very successful and had a high pass rate, Why not use that resource that you got right there and have all students in that grade level have access to that valuable resource that's there? So for me, that's a part of adjusting your instructional program, instructional delivery, and doing what's right for the students and impacting student achievement.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Brundage, what do you think is the role of our career technical education?
Oh my goodness. Career technical education is a wonderful opportunity for our students. I am glad that it has finally come to the forefront. Back in my day, we had home economics. I think it's called culinary now. But and that's just one example. Students in middle and high school that are taking culinary arts and welding, they're beginning to get information about teaching. They're getting certification in nursing. I think this is an awesome, awesome opportunity for our students to be better prepared for the workforce, well prepared for the workforce, and it's great for economic development right here in the city that you're in, especially if there's a need for nurses or there's a need for welders. And I'm picking on a couple of areas here, but if there's a need, why not satisfy that need right here in our schools and with the partnership that we have with the colleges and universities, and give students even more of an opportunity, even more options, not just college or university, maybe a technical school, maybe a technical skill, and not only be ready for those opportunities, but also be ready to walk in somebody's organization and be ready to go straight to work and earn the type of money that somebody who has been there for 15 or 20 years, the same type of money that they earn. I think it's an awesome opportunity. I think that the opportunity for industry certification makes it even better for those students who leave our organization with that paper in their hand and ready to go to work.
What strengths do you have in the area of financial management, including budget development and ongoing fiscal management? Please give concrete examples.
Just to get this out, I am a very conservative superintendent. I've been in a situation where we've had plenty, and it has been, for lack of a better term, it's been abused to use the fund balance like an ATM. And I've been in a situation where we had to tighten the belt, where we had to cut some things. But I'm a very conservative superintendent. I believe in establishing a fund balance and maintaining that fund balance based on state guidelines or what the board policy is. Excuse me. I believe in taking last year's budget and using that as my guide for the coming year's budget. I believe in reviewing that budget for myself to see what we have expended resources on, but also to see where the revenue streams are coming in. Once I have a clear understanding of that, I meet with my chief financial officer to have that person to review with me what they see as the budget, what they see as the potential revenue for projected revenue for the next year, and then build my budget based on that. Now, I say build my budget based on that. At that point, it's not done. It's just done for me at that point. That budget that I've built and I've discussed with my chief financial officer needs to be properly vetted and itemized with certain people in the district included. For instance, the senior level staff, the superintendent's cabinet, representatives from the principal's rank, they need to be involved in the budgeting process as well. I mentioned that I've been involved in a situation where I had to make some cuts. Well, those cuts impact instruction. Those cuts impact principals. Those cuts impact teachers. Those cuts impact jobs. So it's very important for the superintendent and the superintendent's cabinet to have people who are in the trenches, so to speak, as far as the school level, involved in the process of taking a look at the budget and determining what's next, what's essential, things that you absolutely cannot cut, or you sacrifice what you're really trying to do in the classroom. Take a look at those things that are what I call luxuries. We can do without them, but they sure do make a good resource for our teachers and our students as well. So once we get the district budget done, after we've made cuts, or after we have decided what the school's budget is, what each department's budget is, what each division's budget is, what needs to be cut or what needs to be reviewed to see if we're getting bang for our buck. Then we finalize our budget, meet with the budget committee that's inclusive of our principals. Once that budget is finalized and everybody is somewhat satisfied, we meet with the board's budget committee, which may not be all of you. It may be a quorum of you, but that's an opportunity for the board to ask any questions that they would like about the budget. Why is this cut? Why is that? Why didn't we cut this? Are we still going to use books, knowing that we're one-to-one? Are we really one-to-one if we're still ordering millions of dollars worth of books? So that's an opportunity for the board to ask questions about those things before, even though that's a public meeting, before voting on the final budget. And of course, that budget sits out there for a month for the public to scrutinize and provide input into that budget, and then the board makes a decision on a balanced budget.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Will you describe your experience with strategic planning?
Yes, sir. Well, I've been a part of 3 strategic plans so far. And the very first step, in my opinion, in terms of a strategic plan, is to make sure that we hold public forums so that everybody who wants to be involved in the strategic plan can get involved. The strategic plan sometimes because you're going to want to do some things, or because you're going to want to fund some things, and because you may ask for some of the public's money, they need to be involved in that process. It's very, very important that the public, our local agencies, local officials are involved in that process. Teachers, students, administrators across the district, some board members are involved in that process. That's why you hold a public forum, to see what's important to the entire community, not just what the superintendent thinks the community needs, but what does the community need based on their perspective. That's an opportunity for everybody, all of the stakeholders, to provide some input and then come up with some pillars. For example, maybe it's communication, maybe it's communication and school safety, and then of course student achievement is always going to be right there. Maybe those are the pillars, and once you get those pillars of things that are important to the community, and those are just examples, then you begin to develop your mission. You begin to develop your vision for the district, and it's not just the superintendent doing that. It's us as a collective body doing that in this community. Then you begin to establish the beliefs, not the superintendent's belief, but the beliefs of the community. We're going to work together to develop that. Once those things are done, we establish some objectives. What do we want to accomplish based on those three pillars: communication, the safety, and the student achievement. Then we begin to develop some action steps to accomplish those objectives. Those action steps may identify some artifacts to help you measure whether or not you've achieved what you want to achieve. And of course, once that plan is done, that plan is not only presented to the board, it's also presented to the public and to the employees in a public forum, so to speak. But before doing that, of course, the presentation to the board to approve certain objectives that we have outlined in the strategic plan, and then we move forward with the board approval and the implementation of that plan. The implementation, of course, involves the superintendent's cabinet, and pushing out the support and the resources to our schools, and it really happens in the classroom. The implementation and the development of the results that you're looking for.
Dr. Brundage, it kind of, what you just said kind of cut into the question that I had. You said something about public forum. Have you done that before as in the positions that you've been in, had public forums and got input from the community, stakeholders and all that before putting your plan in place?
Yes, sir. Actually, just to give you an example, recently, of course, everybody's concerned about school safety because of what happened in Parkland. And since I'm over school safety, we've had several forums over the past 3 weeks with student groups, with advisory councils, of course, with the board, even at my parent academy. Before I allowed them to take part in those fun classes that they were taking, we had a forum there so that they could provide input on what their thoughts are. Now, from my perspective, anytime something happens, I think we have a safe school, but I always like to step back and reflect on whether or not it's safe enough, especially when things like that happen. But I didn't want the public to think that I had all the answers. So I wanted input from them. And basically what that did for me and did for them, it gave them a voice, but it also gave me new ideas from our law enforcement, from our parents and teachers, from our employees, what would make them feel safer at school. Whether that's metal detectors or clear book bags, they had an opportunity to provide that input. And at the moment, I'm collecting that information for preparation to redeliver to them. This is what you thought in these particular groups, and this is the direction that we're going, based on what I think as well as your input.
And I'm sure that a lot of the community and a lot of people would like to to provide their input. My question is that how often would you have meetings like that, where you have public forum where, maybe you would like to ask the public how you think I'm doing or how you think the system is going, or would you like to provide any more input? And I know that is tied in with this question because the governing style with a new superintendent, there's going to be new governing styles. We've been, and I said this before to our last candidate, is that applicant, is that we've had most of, our superintendent has been in place 12 plus years, okay? So you coming in or anyone that come in is going to have a different style. How would your style, how would you be able to smooth your style or make it a smooth transition to the employees, to the community, to those that work for you? Because maybe someone that is so used to doing it the other way have some type of resistance and feel like, well, if it ain't broke, why fix it? I don't like your style. I want to do it this style. This is what I've been doing for years. I'm not far from retiring, so I want to continue to do it this way. How would you be able to make that a smooth transition?
Well, I think you mentioned the forums. I also think that you have smaller meetings, smaller meet and greets with different agencies, different employee groups, different stakeholders, and they give them an opportunity to meet me and to get to know me. Once those things are established, I think it's important for us to have an agenda. Of course, I would have an agenda of how I think the meeting should go. But I'd have those groups or individuals from those groups to have access to my assistant and perhaps provide some agenda items. And the reason why I would do that, I know that may be opening up a can of worms, but the reason why I would do that is because the things that I see as concerns may not be the same concerns as theirs. So I want to give them an opportunity for input on my agenda. I think once I give them a voice, once I give them an opportunity to have some input, and once they get to know me, our concerns become mutual eventually. Now there may be some things that's blocking the thought process, but the end result for all of us is student achievement, and we want to make sure that we're going in the right direction for that. The naysayers for me, I want them to come to my meeting. I want them to have an opportunity to want us to have an opportunity to kind of flesh out what the real issue is. But I also want to set up an opportunity to express what the expectation is. A new leader coming in, there are some things that we see as things that need to be adjusted, and these are the expectations for making those adjustments. I believe in helping that person get to that point. It doesn't happen overnight, but you have to get to that point. I would utilize my leadership team as far as principals are concerned to get, because a lot of times it's really in the classroom. It's not the principal most of the time. So I would utilize that principal to get that person back on board. I'd make that person lead some things in that school. I'd put them on my advisory council. I'd hear from them, but it would also be an opportunity for me to kind of outline the state of our system, and then the state of the school that they're in, and then they may not want me to get down into the state of their particular classroom, but their principals certainly will. And then I mentioned this before. You can't argue with the data. So if I have a naysayer and the data is great, I probably won't fix that. That's an attitude adjustment.
Yeah.
But if I have a naysayer that doesn't have the data to back being a naysayer, then that's something that needs to be fixed, because at that point you're hurting kids.
Thank you.
Dr. Brundage, this is a diverse community. How would you work to ensure that all groups of people are fully engaged with the schools and the system as a whole?
I mentioned to you that I have been over complaints for the past 9 years. So that opportunity helped me to learn to listen, learn what the issues are, and then to become a problem solver. But most importantly, to listen, and then learn. I believe in creating opportunities for that to happen. And I mentioned public forums before, but I think you also have to do that for different groups. You have to have a parent advisory council where parent representatives from all schools are there and able to have a voice, have an impact on the agenda. I think you have to have a regular advisory council where people in the business community are there and they have a voice as far as what the agenda should look like, and give me an opportunity to address their concerns as well. At those meetings, I believe in having a student advisory council as well, because everything that we do impacts them, and they need to know that these things are not done to them; it's being done for them. But they need to have a voice as well in terms of what they feel is an adequate education or resource for them. So I believe in developing or creating mechanisms for direct contact, not just with my principals or the executive leadership, but a direct contact with me. I mentioned earlier that I don't want anybody to fear me. I have an open door policy. I want you, and now we're going to be respectful, but I do want you to come in and be candid about what you feel is going on. I believe in showing my face, and being visible at different community activities wherever they are, whether it's on the north side, the south side, the east side, or the west side, even in the middle. So I think it's important that not only I invite those people, those particular groups, to come to me and be involved, but also for me to go to them and be visible in their section of the community. I think when you have people involved in those particular meetings that I mentioned, and you have an opportunity to provide like a state of the system address to them, talk about the good things that are going on in Gadsden, talk about some areas of need, being very open and honest and transparent with those people, then you keep them informed on a regular basis. Then they're willing to support you on the things that you need to do as a school system.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Describe specific strategies you would use to promote public support for school activities, budget, and instructional programs.
This is worth mentioning again. I believe that we invite the public to a public forum. We give them an opportunity to see what the state of the system is. We give them opportunities to see the great things that are happening in Gadsden City Schools. We showcase all of those great things. I think that every organization or faction of the community needs to see that. So those are highlights. But I also believe in being very, very transparent as far as student achievement data is concerned, being transparent as far as what the budget is, and talking to the public about what the areas of focus are. Those are the things that need to be improved. I believe in communicating the plan for improvement as well. Once I communicate the plan for continuous improvement, I believe in communicating the monitoring system that I would use in order to determine if we're reaching that or moving towards the goal of student achievement. The support comes when I'm able to report on a regular basis what the results of the monitoring has been, what the results of our benchmarks are. Have we made progress? Have our students experienced growth in those tested areas? And then, as always, provide an opportunity for the public to have input into that. And I know that that's rough waters or territory, but I believe that the people should have a voice and they should have some input in the kids' education here in the community.
Thank you. Share with us an example of when you were especially innovative in addressing funding gaps.
Okay. Thank you for that question. Let me give an example. State funding, the state has a funding formula for each school based on enrollment. So, two schools, School A and School B, have similar enrollments. Let's say they had 600 kids, both schools. School A has 90% free and reduced lunch, and School B has 55% free and reduced lunch. They have the same number of kids, both Title I schools probably, but the free and reduced lunch rate is different. Um, so as far as the state funding formula is concerned, both schools get the exact same amount of money as far as the general fund is concerned for those two schools because they both have 600 kids. Um, the school with the 90% free and reduced lunch rate getting the same amount of money as the school with the 55% free and reduced lunch rate is equal, right? But it's not equitable because you have 90% free and reduced lunch. So what I've experienced is when we receive Title I dollars, we can rank all of our schools that are Title I. And we can rank them based on the percentage of free and reduced lunch that those schools have. The ones with the highest free and reduced lunch at the top, and the ones with the lowest free and reduced lunch at the bottom. When we receive those Title I funds, we can use those funds and use a funding formula, a local funding formula, to allocate those dollars more to the one that has the most free and reduced lunch rate or the highest free and reduced lunch rate, and then incrementally go down that list. But everybody that is a Title I school or have a free everyone that's a Title I school will receive funds. It's just that to make it, I mentioned that it's equal, but to make it equitable, you use those funds to kind of level the playing field where those teachers or those principals can allocate those funds the way they need to, whether that be an after school program or after school tutorial or hiring additional staff to reduce the class size, just having that another personnel on staff that can support the kids. So that's one of the creative ways that I've been able to, again, kind of level the playing field when state funding is the same for both schools, but it's really not equitable.
Thank you.
How have you held staff members accountable for student achievement while balancing the demands put on our teachers?
Well, I believe in clearly communicating what the expectations are, and not only to principals but also to teachers. But I also believe in giving them a model, and I believe that the cycle for continuous improvement is the model that that everyone should be using in order to get students to 100% mastery. Um, I've done that before. The process uh, involves making sure that the teachers and the principals are involved in what that continuous improvement model looks like, that they have embraced it, and not only are we using it as a district, we're using it as individual schools, and each teacher is also using it in their classroom. What does that mean when we're using it in the classroom for continuous improvement? That means that a teacher receives information about their students, say, for instance, on the benchmark. So we use the benchmark to see how effective the instruction has been, let's say, for 9 weeks. So holding the teacher accountable for what those scores look like means that I have to put that information in front of that teacher, and that teacher has to embrace that. We have to model that process for them. They have to take a look at that, and then that teacher has to determine which students have operated according to proficiency and which students have not, what students have deficiencies. Um, Holding them accountable means that those that are below proficiency, putting those kids on a caseload, and once those kids are on that caseload, we implement, so to speak, or we operate according to the cycle that I mentioned before. I think that cycle needs to be institutionalized in terms of being done across the board at every school, in every classroom, for the benefit of every child. It's important for the principal and the teacher to set their own targets. Now, I have my targets, but my targets may be a little bit more aggressive, or they may not be aggressive enough. I met some sharp principals today, so their targets may be a little bit more aggressive than mine. But it's important that as a group, the superintendent and the principal sets targets that are realistic, not only for the teacher, but also for our students, and then hold them accountable for meeting those targets either at the benchmark time or at the end of the year. Now, I think I'm going into another part of your question, so I'll stop here.
Okay, how have you measured the staff's performance?
Okay. First of all, the staff's performance. Before we get to the big state assessment, the staff's performance is determined by how well we do on the benchmark, and then of course the benchmark gives us information about a lot. Um, the benchmark has to be aligned to what is being taught, otherwise is useless. And that the benchmark is not used for a gotcha for the student. or the teacher. These assessments have to be used for information to determine where our students are and what we need, what deficiencies they have, so that we can provide the support that they need to do better on the next benchmark, and then if not on the next benchmark, the third benchmark, and give them adequate preparation for the state assessment. State assessment.
Okay. What obstacles have you faced, and how did you handle those obstacles?
I've mentioned that already, but the obstacle that I faced was the benchmark not being aligned to what was being taught. In other words, I believe benchmarks, if they're not developed by the testing company or a vendor, um, if they're not developed by the teacher, the teachers, because only the teachers know how far they've gotten in that particular instructional lesson, how far they are on their pacing guides. Only the teacher knows that. So I think the benchmark needs to be developed by the teacher. But the problem that I've had is that alignment with the curriculum or that alignment with what has been taught. Either the benchmark is far beyond what where the teacher has gotten, and that's no fault of the teacher always. It's just a matter of them having to reteach or where their kids are. These benchmarks, a lot of times, are developed before the school year even starts. So the benchmark is saying you should have taught this much information, but that's not always true if you got a certain group of kids in front of you.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Dr. Brundage,
Mhm.
as we select a new superintendent for Gadsden City Schools, what are the top three strengths or attributes you believe you bring that our district could benefit from?
Oh, well, um, you all will realize this, but I'm a man of integrity. I am very trustworthy. I am very open and honest. I like to be very transparent. That way I don't have to come back and tell you something different. You know it's me. um, I bring the opportunity to build strong relationships. I have prided myself on doing that for my entire career with students, with teachers, with leaders, and with right now with community members. So I am a relationship builder. I think that's the only way that we can move forward is to have those strong, long-lasting relationships. And third, I am a problem solver. I don't run from problems. I don't give my problems to the board, and I don't give them to my staff. I have been a problem solver for the benefit of kids and to help them to be successful. So those are the three things that I bring to Gadsden City Schools.
Thank you. Board members, do you have additional questions?
Drink of water.
I'm fine for now.
All right. As I understand it, your current school system, Rockdale, has been in the process of a superintendent search since October. I know things vary from state to state and system from systems. So if you feel it's inappropriate for you to comment, I will defer the question. Otherwise, my question is, are you involved in the process?
I interviewed for the superintendent's position in Rockdale 3 weeks ago. Let me just say that it's been 3 weeks, and for me, I want to know that the community and the board wants me, and that's very important to me. And it doesn't seem to be the case in Rockdale. I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but that decision seems to be kind of lingering too long for for me to feel in my gut that that's the right place for me to be the superintendent. So I have been involved in that process. I am one of the 6 finalists, and I just haven't heard anything and don't get a good feel for uh, the 7-0 vote that I need.
What information have you received and reviewed about Gadsden, and does that include the current strategic plan?
Repeat your question for me.
Yes, sir. Information that you have received and reviewed about the Gadsden school system, and specifically, did that include the current strategic plan?
I have taken a look at the strategic plan. I've also taken a look at the advanced ed documents that you have for Gadsden, as well as the technology plan that you have for Gadsden. I've also reviewed the student achievement, the data for student achievement, the not just the test scores, but also the attendance rate for each individual school. So I've taken a look at all of that information as well. I do know that you have um or you're building relationships with the colleges and universities, and we're looking to expand on that. But those are the things that I've already taken a look at.
Based on that information, what do you see as the strengths of the Gadsden system, and how would you build on that strength?
Well, some of the strengths is I like the fact that you all have combined the 3 high schools. Now, I hope no tomatoes come up here, but in my school system, all 3 schools have 1,500 to 2,000 kids, and I think having all 3 schools combined at Gaston City High School is a positive. It is This is a huge facility with a lot of space and a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity to bring other things, other companies into this particular school. The Gaston City schools have a lot of support from the community that needs to be fostered. There are people, elected officials here that want to do more. There are. I had an opportunity to meet the president over at Gadsden Community College, Gadsden State Community College, who wants to do more, who wants to partner with us. I think the partnerships are a great asset that we can build upon to do what's right for our kids. I think the dual enrollment that you have here is a positive for each and every high school student. Um, I think that every student that qualifies should be taking advantage of that opportunity. And if they're not, uh, we need to educate, not just our people that work for us. Educate our parents and educate our students on what uh, the possibilities are here. How would I build on that? I think building relationships within this community, getting everybody involved, not just the board and the employees, but getting everybody in this community involved and connected to do to set up our kids for success at every level, elementary, middle, and high.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Board members, do you have any additional questions?
Can you repeat your children, your age of your children again?
Brooke is 13 and Jana is 11, 8th grade and 6th grade.
Okay. Since we have barraged you with questions, we're going to give you an opportunity to ask us. Do you have any questions for the board?
Well, I really just have one question. What is the most pressing, besides hiring a superintendent, what's the most pressing concern or issue for the board?
Dr. Watts?
A lot of it you've touched on already, which is, student achievement. Our trade program, making sure that it's the biggest and the brightest. There are a lot of opportunities here in Gadsden for industry and things of that nature. Make sure that those partnerships are where they need to be. Closing the achievement gap, looking at the difference between the indicators and our graduation rate, closing the gap there as well. Supporting our teachers, giving them the resources that they need, and the innovation that goes along with that. Understanding that we have a diverse community and every part of that community is important, and making sure that they feel that their needs are being met at the level of everyone else. Those things are very important to this board. Having the right person at the helm of the ship is very important because whoever the captain is and the attitude of that captain will determine whether we're successful at this or not. Everyone on this board wants the best for our children. And with that comes a great amount of responsibility. And no one up here takes that responsibility lightly. And so some of the things that we do as a board, even just through this process, may not be the most convenient thing for the board to do. But we feel like it's important for us to show the resources and the commitment that we have to the school system. And we expect that commitment to be reciprocated from whomever we choose as the superintendent.
Thank you.
Do
Madam
you have
President,
any other questions, Dr. Brundage?
That was my only question. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. That was
my
your
only
only
question.
question. Okay,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
okay. Been a long day, but I want to thank you for your interest in Gadsden City Schools. Enjoyed being with you today and going around the city and the area. Want to thank all the community partners that have been participating in these tours, and especially to the mayor and the city of Gadsden for providing the taping of the interviews so that people can watch them. For whatever reason, we try to schedule at a time when we think that everybody can't always be there. So it is important that people have access to it, and we want to thank. That's invaluable to me. We do have refreshments outside.